Do you remember dancing with your father as a young child? My Papa's Waltz by Theodore Roethke captures a different type of waltz between a child and their father. In this poem, there are 16 powerful lines that reflect the memory of a young boy dancing with his father. However, from the frown on his mother's face, it's obvious she did not approve of this dance. It also does not appear to be all that fun for the child either. I would like to take a moment to read My Papa's Waltz. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like death. Such waltzing was not easy. We romped until the pan slid from the kitchen shelf. My mother's countenance could not unfrown itself. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. At every step you missed, my right ear scraped a buckle. You beat time on my head, with a palm caked hard by dirt, then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. This is an example of a formal poem, with a rhyme in every other line. Did you imagine this as a fun waltz? Or did you think there was abuse during this waltz? We have outlined items of significance in this poem. The imagery in this poem allows the reader to visualize what the father was like. In the first stanza, we learn the father has been drinking whiskey, so much so that it could make the boy dizzy. In the third and fourth stanzas, the father's hands are described as being scraped and caked with dirt. This symbolizes the father worked with his hands and appeared to be someone of the working class. In all four stanzas, there is the illusion of abuse, with examples of hanging on like death, an unhappy mother as pans are sliding off the shelf. The father is holding on to the child's wrist instead of his hand like one would expect if they were truly doing a waltz. The last stanza states the father was beating time on his head. Although the poem does not come out and state it is abuse, it is recognized by the reader. Secondly, there are examples of duality in this poem. Duality means having two parts, often with opposite meanings, like the duality of good and evil. The first example is the use of waltz. A waltz is a very rhythmic dance, however, the father is clumsy and seems to be feared. Another example is in stanza 3, where it's mentioned that the child is being held by his wrist and has his ear scraping a buckle. Yet, in stanza 2, the word romp would indicate a carefree type of play. Finally, there is duality with fear and love, with security and clinging. Next, the reader can identify different themes as well. First is the impact alcohol has on the family. This could be the most precious time the child has with their father. However, the mother is frowning and shows she is unhappy. In the line, "You beat time on my head," one can question if this is a gentle beat while having fun, or is this the type of beating that would be considered abusive? With the amount of alcohol the father has had, and the fact that the mother appears upset, it leads one to believe that this was not an enjoyable experience. The reader also sees the different roles of the parents. The father appears to be a hard worker, by the description of his hands, and he's probably the sole provider for the family. The mother is introduced as being in the kitchen, which cooking and cleaning would have been the responsibility of a mother during this time. The father is the parent that ends up putting the child to bed at night, which seems surprising after the description of their waltz. There are also examples of irony in this poem. We see this with the smell of whiskey making a boy dizzy. Waltzing with someone who is drunk could also make someone dizzy. The child is also hanging on like death while dancing. Normally, when one's dancing, you don't have to hold on for dear life unless you're scared. Romp and waltz usually present a carefree activity, whereas this seems to feel more dangerous. In summary, the poem My Papa's Waltz is a beautiful poem that demonstrates a relationship between a father and son. Ultimately, the father and son are said to be dancing, but is that really what's occurring? The father could be seen as abusive, where the waltz being described is the abuse occurring in the relationship. The father seems to be a working class man who is an alcoholic. This being said, alcohol triggers the abuse occurring through the waltz. There are many different literary works being found in the poem with duality, themes, and irony. Overall, the poem explains that there is more than meets the eye. The text holds a greater understanding than just the words that are written on a page. Thank you for listening to our analysis of My Papa's Waltz.